Dr. Zaldivar, I've actually been anticipating you being on this channel for a while because you were one of the first people I encountered in the carnivore space whenever I was watching videos years back. So I'm glad to have you on the channel finally. I'm just gonna jump right into this like I do with everyone else to get things started. Who are you in the first place, and what brought you to carnivore?
Thank you so much, Eddie. Um, so what brought me to carnivore was my decades-long struggle with weight loss and binge eating, specifically in food addiction and sugar addiction. So what really started me on this alternate path, because I did my bachelor's and my master's in nutrition and dietetics, and then went on and I got my PhD in nutrition and exercise physiology from the University of Miami. And the whole reasoning for choosing that path was first for weight loss. But then when I landed in Miami and I started, right away they put you to start teaching. I started developing because I had no experience in public speaking, and here I am, teaching hundreds of students. It took me a long time before I realized this is just an experience thing. And once you build up your experience and your knowledge gap, the anxiety goes away. But because it takes so long, and I didn't have any professionals in my family to advise me and tell me like that this is normal, and I started feeling maybe there's something wrong with me, and that led me down the path of looking into diets for anxiety. And that pushed me into keto, which after the seventh day of a ketogenic diet, for the first time, I felt like my brain turned on. I did not realize that I struggled with brain fog and not having this mental clarity until it went away. So I was hooked at that point. Also, another early experience with the something different than what I was taught in nutrition school, which was the food guide pyramid, was struggling with acne, going through the whole gamut of mainstream medicines treatments. I did Accutane twice. I did spironolactone for 2 years. I did birth control pills. I did antibiotics for 3 months, which was the dumbest mistake that I've ever done. Nothing worked. My skin never cleared until I read the Acne Cure, which was all about the paleo diet by Dr. Lauren Cordain, the grandfather of the modern paleo movement. And that really was my first kind of it like opened my eyes that everything we were taught is not necessarily true. So that paleo experience, clearing my skin, plus the keto, removing the it didn't remove the anxiety, because the anxiety only went away after a few years of just teaching a lot, but the mental clarity that I got from keto, plus the paleo experience and clearing my skin together, led me down this path of constantly learning and figuring out, well, what else do I not know? And also, along that path, I realized that keto is great for body composition, but I was still struggling with binge eating and keto binges. So instead of regular binges, now it was keto binges, and I would do keto treats and things like that. And every time I would be in the depth of another setback, I would get really depressed. But my way of dealing with the depression is, yeah, I'd be crying and I'd be very sad and frustrated. But at the same time, I'd be watching podcasts. And one of those podcasts was the carnivore diet with, I believe it was Sean Baker and then Paul Saladino and Joe Rogan. And from there, I went and I bought the books and The Plant Paradox by Dr. Stephen Gundry. And in my
Mhm.
head, it was like, well, maybe the carnivore diet is what I need in terms of binge eating, and that's kind of how it went. And then my husband, I also was talking to him about that, and the only vegetable my husband ever ate, because he was always carnivore, and I was always on his case telling him how he needs the fruits and the vegetables because I was brainwashed for decades, but he never listened to me. And the only plain food he ever ate was a bed of spinach, and then on top of that, he would put like chicken breast or ground, because he's a bodybuilder and he's won multiple shows, always has abs all year long. So that's why he did it. And he thought, okay, a little bit of volume. Let me get some spinach. He wouldn't even put salad dressing, like not even lemon juice, olive, like nothing, like dry spinach leaves. And then he'll just put like dry, like chicken breast. I was like, how can you eat this stuff? And the only ailment he ever had was low back pain that was so severe, but he didn't want to get surgery for it. But at some point, it just got really bad to the point where he decided he's going to take the risk. There are risks involved with spinal surgery, right? And it's there, like they're operating on your spine. And that was exactly the moment where I was deep into like really reading the plant paradox and starting to do carnivore. And I was like, why don't you just quit the spinach for a while and let's see. And that was what around 2017, 2018. He quit the spinach within like maybe 3 days. It was gone. This lifelong, decades long severe issue with low back pain where he could not watch two movies in a row. Like he couldn't say one day, oh, we're just gonna Netflix and chill all day long. Like he couldn't do that. If we were to drive from Miami to Orlando, a 4 hour drive to go to the theme parks, Disney and whatever, by the end of the 4 hour drive, his back was so sore. It was horrible. He couldn't get enough sleep because if he's in that position for too long, his back would get sore. So being, horizontal or sitting for too long was really bad. So the fact that that went away completely, we take it for granted now, but that was a major change for his quality of life, and he doesn't have that anymore just because he quit the spinach. So all those things together pushed us into a carnivore loving lifestyle, I guess. And then, of course, I was, because of the YouTube videos, I guess I was one of the earliest doctors that was talking about the carnivore diet. There was like Sean Baker, Paul Saladino, Ken Berry. There was like a big channels talking about that. So there weren't really a lot of doctors talking about the carnivore diet. And then I started posting about it. And so that's why they had me on the first ever TV show, The Carnivore Diet, the reverse TV series that we filmed in Costa Rica. And yeah, that's kind of like that my journey with it.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. 3 days to ameliorate a condition that was decades long. That's just
It's
honestly,
insane.
as relieving as that is, I'm sure that that was a little frustrating at the same time. That the solution was that
Yeah.
simple, but you were never taught that that was,
Yeah.
something so
He
healthy
saw
like spinach.
exactly. So he worked in Miami at the Jackson Memorial Hospital because that's where I met him. So Jackson Memorial Hospital is right there where the University of Miami, all the research buildings where I worked when I was a
Mhm.
doctoral student, right? So he worked in the hospital and I was there, and so he saw all the doctors at the University of Miami and the Memorial Jackson Hospital system. It's like the top doctors in the nation, and they all showed him the scans. It's like, look, you have a bulging disc because back in the 1992, I believe, Hurricane Andrew came over Miami, and it was like a Category 5, and a tree fell on his house, and so he actually tried to push the tree, move it away, and that's really the first injury to his back. So
Mm.
everybody told him, and there are all of these scans, all these doctors telling him it's just you have a bulging disc, and that's why you have this pain. Well, he still has the bulging disc. It doesn't autocorrect, but no more pain. And so, what do you make of that?
Yeah. Right. So yeah, I'm glad that that happened. I mean, you said that that was the only bit of plant material that he really ate. Was he like
That was it.
unintentionally carnivore in a way? Like he wasn't actively,
No,
consciously doing it, or was he purposely doing a carnivore approach?
no, not purposely. He's just like, I like my abs and I want to keep abs, and I know carbs are bad. He just intuitively knew. Whereas I was telling him, no, it doesn't matter, because everything I was taught is like, it's just calories in, calories out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you said that you had some anxiety issues whenever you were teaching classes, right?
Oh, it was
Um,
awful.
how long did it take you to get over that?
Years, years, but I was teaching, let's say 3 hours a day on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That was my schedule. I would say maybe 3 years, 4 years of doing that. Really, I think once I started teaching a lot more often, and I started teaching at Miami-Dade College more, so it was like multiple, just more experience. Plus, I started teaching for the American College of Sports Medicine, 3 day like immersive workshops, like 8 hour days for 3 days in a row. So over time you just get comfortable with that, and then I would have auditoriums for like 100 students, and some of those students at UM were like older than me. When I landed in Miami, I was 25 years old, and so there were like much older people taking my classes. It's just experience, but yeah, like 3 years, if you don't know that you're on track to get super comfortable, you can start to freak out. I remember like the first few semesters, I'd be walking towards class and I could feel my heart beating out of my chest. It it was very like I saw doctors, they gave me beta blockers. It didn't work.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have, I think I may have left those YouTube videos up on my channel. I have a YouTube video talking about that because I wish somebody told me like it's normal, it's completely normal. You just need to be over prepared initially, and later on it's fine. So in the later stages of teaching, I no longer, I used to like, once I realized that preparation made me feel a little bit better, I would do that a lot, but then eventually um, I wouldn't even remember which chapter we're in. I would just like show up and be like, so where are we at? You know, like you can go from severe anxiety to the most confident public speaker in the world. Like that is possible. And I hope people know that it's just a knowledge gap, experience gap. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And so you just really want to work 20 times harder initially if you want to get there faster. That's all.
Yeah. I was just interviewing, you may know him as Kent Carnivore, on YouTube.
The one who does the documentaries, the carnivore documentaries.
No, so you may recognize him as the person that he had to have his colon removed, because yeah, yeah, yeah,
You're talking about,
I
yeah.
think he's a
Do a docu like
I think he's part of it. I think he's part of the Healing Humanity. Yeah.
yes.
The reason I brought him up is because I just interviewed him, and he was talking about how whenever he was going through that condition, he became extraordinarily depressed, and then whenever he got on carnivore or started eating that diet, the depression actually vanished. He kept thinking that the depression was due to this condition and due to him believing that like an enigma. He has to live a totally different life now, and he's very, restricted. He thought that it was only due to that. But on the carnivore diet, he's still just as restricted as he has been with the bag, but he has no depression at all. And the reason I bring this up is because of why I asked you about your anxiety. You said that you had anxiety as a result of, like teaching and some other things, I'm sure, I believe. But I was going to ask, do you think that the carnivore diet makes it to where you are far less anxious when encountering those situations than you otherwise would be if you were not consuming that diet? Did you actually notice that when you shifted over?
I I can tell you for sure that if because I didn't go into carnivore strict right away. I was still sometimes
Okay.
eating things I shouldn't be eating, and I could definitely see a major difference with my mental health when I would eat junk versus when I would eat strict carnivore. Now, is it more about me, not sticking to the meal plan and I'd be disappointed in myself and that would make me depressed, or was it the actual seed oils and sugar in that
Mm-hmm.
food? It's hard to tease that
Right.
out, you know? Uh, so now my mental health is fantastic and I do work out too, I train and I eat carnivore. And so I think it's multiple things. And I think for some people, they're a lot more sensitive than others. So for some people, literally the actual, just a little bit of gluten can really set off inflammation in their brain and give them depression. I don't think I'm that sensitive to it. But yeah, it's hard to tease out for like really give you a very definite answer because it's hard to know without running those
Yeah.
tests, you know?
No, I understand.
But yeah, there's a lot of people like, with success stories where, yeah, you would think they thought that they had mental health issues because of something, and then all of a sudden it like gives you this mental clarity. So I think there's definitely something to the diet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clears your skin, why wouldn't it clear your brain, right? If it improves the
Right.
health of your skin, it improves your microbiome, it just would make sense that it would also remove inflammation from your brain.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad that you just brought that last part up because I was gonna say that it wasn't even really a question. You talked about how it clears up acne, or it cleared up your acne. I see this all the time. I've seen it personally on myself and also my girlfriend as well. Acne is not a problem anymore, and I don't think people understand like acne is a manifestation or a presentation really of inflammation. Things that are red and swollen and painful when you touch it. It's like, so of course going on a diet that doesn't inundate you with a bunch of inflammatory compounds, it seems to be pretty conducive to alleviating inflammation in any form, whether it be acne or whether it be the pain associated with the disc in your husband.
So true. With
Yeah.
acne too, a lot of people, because I kept on having adult acne. It didn't go away after teenage years. So what I have is hormonal acne, which is driven by high testosterone levels. So why do you get high testosterone levels and you get hormonal acne or adult acne that stays with you for as long as as your life? It's because when you eat carbohydrates, your body releases insulin. And so most people tend to not be able to tolerate the amount of carbohydrates we deem as normal in this on the standard American diet. And so you might be eating a normal diet, but the amount of carbs in that normal diet or that standard American diet is just way too many carbohydrates. So your body has to release way too much insulin because you have a certain level of insulin resistance. So you're eating carbs, you're releasing way too much insulin. All this insulin pushes free testosterone levels to go up. Free testosterone levels go up, which leads to your sebaceous glands to release a lot of sebum. And when you release a lot of sebum, that provides growth of the P. acnes. They changed the name now. I forgot. I have an online course on acne. When I was updating it, it's C something else. But anyway, it used to be called proprionis acne, something like that. P. acnes. Its food is sebum. So it because that bacteria that lives on your skin creates a digestive enzyme called lipase. Lipase digests fat, right?
Yeah.
So that lipase has now all the food, all of the sebum, all the oil that you're producing. And so it feeds on that and it grows. And now you have inflammation and it takes residence in your skin. So it all goes back to carbs. Stop eating carbs. You will no longer release all this insulin. You will not drive your free testosterone to such high levels. You will not kickstart the sebum production, and you will not provide fuel for the P. acnes bacteria to proliferate, and so clear skin. That's another way for, because like even keto can work for some people. For others, they have to remove all inflammation, even like
Hmm.
maybe if they might be sensitive to plants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. You said that you were also, you focus a lot, you emphasize a lot on your channel about exercise. Not just fixing diet, but also combining that with exercise. Resistance training in particular, not steady state cardio and stuff like that. You said that you were doing that. Did you see any benefit in fat loss when you were exercising as opposed to only eating better? Or any differences for
Yeah.
that matter?
Massive. And it's not because of the calorie count or whatever. You
Yeah.
need both cardio and you need strength training because you need to rebuild that brain, right? Especially if you come from a history of food addiction or sugar addiction or depression or anxiety, your brain and the habits that you develop over time living in that state leads to a drop in your baseline dopamine levels. So you start to destroy the D2 receptors, which are the dopamine receptors in your brain cells. So even if you release dopamine, it has no receptors for it to bind to, because dopamine, for you to feel the effects of dopamine, you need dopamine to be released, and it should attach to its receptor, the D2 receptor. It's a lock and key situation. Only when you have enough dopamine and enough D2 receptors, you really feel motivated, energetic, no cravings, no distractions. You have great memory, great focus and productivity. And so a lot of us have destroyed our D2 receptors. And so it's really important to be able to heal that brain damage that has occurred. And if you just do the diet, it can help, given that you did not substitute for any other addiction in your lifestyle, like video game addiction or social media or something that like that, because those can keep your D2 receptors down. But if you let's say eliminate all addictions, it takes around 2 years for your brain chemistry to go back to normal. And so this is why rates of rehab programs are just like rates of success are just 5%. That means 95% of people that go to rehab programs fail, whatever addiction it is, alcohol, cocaine, food addiction, whatever the case may be. It's 95% fail. And a lot of times, and I've interviewed a lot of the heads of the directors of those rehab centers, and they seem to all pretty much kind of discourage exercise because exercise is considered a stressor. Stress is the trigger for addiction. And it's just that never made sense to me. I mean, my dissertation was actually on how to use exercise for food addiction. Like that was a topic. I was doing it, but it wasn't clicking for me. Just like intuitively, I knew I liked that topic. Later on, it clicked for me, and that became really the focus of my work with my clients. So anyway, this is why rehab programs don't work, is because instead of treating the root cause of the addiction, which is the low D2 receptor number, they're telling people like, no, it's okay, like just live in that fear-based status all the time. Yeah, well, imagine having almost no dopamine activity in your brain. Your baseline dopamine is so low because you've destroyed your D2 receptors, and now you're out and about living for 2 years before your brain chemistry sort of goes back to normal. What are the chances that you're not going to relapse? Like close to zero, right? I mean, or like the chances that you're yeah. So this is why my approach is like, let's just go ahead and target the root cause. Let's just rebuild that brain so you have a resilient, strong brain that no matter what amount of stress you're going to encounter, you can overcome, right? It strengthens everything. It strengthens your brain, it strengthens your heart, it strengthens your muscles, your immune system gets stronger, you won't get sick as much. It strengthens your cartilage, your bone density.
Mhm.
It fixes leaky guts, all these people just trying to do the diet. And it's like, well, how about you also help the leaky gut to get repaired by adding in the cardio, adding in the strength training? Cardio is actually far more powerful in rebuilding the D2 receptors because your time under tension is longer as opposed to taking the breaks with the strength training. They all work. It's really just about being uncomfortable. The longer you can be uncomfortable and the more intense the discomfort, the faster you're gonna increase the D2 receptors and the higher numbers D2 receptors you can get. So yeah, I just see all these clients. They go from carnivore coach to another carnivore coach. They're just shopping around one after, and because they never want to do the work, they're just like, oh, just eat meat. It's like you can't just eat meat and sit on your butt all day long. I'm sorry that sounds harsh, but I just see it over and over and over again. They feel like they're just looking for a hack for this miracle cure, but they don't want to get uncomfortable. And it's like you can just stop seeing all the coaches and do the one thing you've never done in your entire life. Force yourself to get uncomfortable, right? And I get it. It can be a little of a shock for somebody who's never moved their body before. It's shocking. The discomfort can be overwhelming initially, but this is why, like, if you can find somebody that guides you and show you like, no, this is actually very normal what you're going through, you're going to adapt to that, and this feeling of discomfort will no longer feel uncomfortable for you, and kind of give you reassurance that you're not going to die. That can be helpful, or just what we're talking about right now, just keep that in your mind, but you have to get uncomfortable, because you've probably been in some carnivore groups, and I know your thing is not like the weight loss thing. Most people go to carnivore because it's weight loss plus autoimmune and stuff, but they're just shopping around. They just join these groups day in and day out, and nothing really happens.
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah, I mean, when we had our interview on your channel, I talked about how I forced myself to exercise,
Right.
through the pain at first, and I got so frustrated with the restrictive feeling. I didn't like the idea of me actually have, like, I had a genuine disability, and I still do, but I didn't like the idea of acting disabled. So whether or not it was a good thing to do, I mean, in the long run, I mean, it does seem like it was a good idea because I'm a lot better now just by putting on
Right.
muscle mass. But um, man, like it wasn't fun in the beginning at all. That was
Even that, the fact that you shared that, it triggered somebody with Ehlers downloads. You should go back to that YouTube channel, YouTube video, and go back to the comments, and you will see somebody got super triggered, and she was like, "No, it's just because he's very young that he was able, like, because you sharing the fact that you got better while including exercise kind of made her feel like." It took away some of the excuse, I guess, that she probably was having, because her
it
comment was
probably
with,
imposed a demand on her to put some, to have it be incumbent upon her to do something that she was trying to. Yeah, like you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, you should just go and you'll understand, you know what I mean. And I don't know what to say. And then I finally I just commented, listen, if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them, you know? Because you'll never really know what you're capable of unless you go through that. And I know how much harder it is for some people. Like, I get it. It can be so much more difficult for some. as compared to somebody else with no autoimmune issues or like serious debilitating conditions. But there are people with serious debilitating conditions that are still pushing, and they can do it, you know? I think we are capable of far, far more than what we think we can.
Yeah. No, I agree. Let's get into the real fun stuff. This is what I really like talking about. So let's get into what you were taught in school. I always like talking about this stuff. Um, yeah, you said you had a bachelor's in nutrition and dietetics. Now, I actually don't even want to talk about that because I talk about that a lot. We all know what misinformation is taught in those classes. You said that you hold a PhD in exercise physiology, though. And I've never talked about this. We're all pretty familiar with the lies taught about nutrition in the universities and stuff like that. But I wanted to ask if there were issues like that that you experienced in a class as sophisticated as exercise physiology.
Hmm.
Because we see a lot of exercise physiologists online. I've seen a lot of them. They say things about nutrition because they link them together, rightfully so. I mean, there's a link there, and they justify those positions based on knowledge of exercise. But you clearly have arrived elsewhere with your conclusions. So,
Yeah, yeah. I think with the exercise stuff, there's because I also not only like with the PhD, but also was hired by the American College of Sports Medicine to teach personal trainers who wanted to become certified with the American College of Sports Medicine to become ACSM PTs, which by the way is like the gold standard for in the exercise physiology world. Like that's the gold standard organization, and it's the hardest test to pass to become a personal trainer. So I would do those workshops and help people get prepared to take the exam. And there were like similar teachings, whatever we were taught at UM and also what I was teaching at ACSM. And I think the biggest thing is whenever you're taking official recommendations, they're usually always erring on the side of safety. Like, be careful. Always be careful with
mhm.
about everything. There's like always like this fear-based recommendation. Um, and I think when you learn that and then you go and you see people doing crazy things, things that nobody thought were humanly possible, yeah, you realize that wow, like we're teaching people to do like 0.1%, not even of their potential. And I think that that installs a lot of limitations. Or you know, if you go and you Google how much time do you need to recover from a marathon, it's like 6 months to recover from a marathon. And then at the same time, you have people running a marathon. Dean Kazaneri, something, he's been on Rich Roll, he's very famous. He runs a marathon every single day, right? Another Helen Ravar, she's in the UK. She runs half a marathon every single day. I run 10 miles every single day, and I could run half a marathon easily every single day because I've trained myself, so I'm super fast. I finish it in no time, right? I don't need to recover. But if I follow those recommendations, and in the beginning, that really would hold me back because I had all this stuff in my mind. It'd be like, that's what I was taught, that's what I'm teaching. Um, and I would feel like, oh my gosh, do I feel a little pain in my knee? Is that
Yeah,
pain?
yeah,
Okay, 2 days recovery, and it's like no, you have to push through some soreness initially. That's how you train the body that this is what is expected from it, and you push through that. It's also a form of intuition. Over time, you figure out what signals are actually problematic and you really do need to rest and which ones are just soreness and just your every day when you're first starting out on a workout program, your body throws a fit every day because it's not used to that. So one day you're gonna get diarrhea after running a lot. It's like because you're trying to heal your leaky gut, but initially it's a lot of stress in one shot. So you get the runner's diarrhea is very famous, right? Then the next day, another system in your body, like your metatarsals are sore. It's like, oof, I can barely walk on that. But then you wake up the next day and it's gone. The day after that, your knee. And it's like you go through so much. And so this is kind of like how most people fall off track of their workout protocols because it's like every day something's happening and they don't realize that that's just every system in your body has a different timeline to adapt. And so every day is going to be something. And then once you push through that enough for like the first month, maybe even 2 months, eventually you won't have any of that anymore. And you'll be running as much as you can. You can be lifting, super hard, intense every single day. I'm not saying not to take recovery days. I'm just saying
Mm.
most people's idea of how much they need to recover versus how much they can push themselves is like 1% of what's possible.
Yeah. I'm glad that you just mentioned that a lot of the recommendations are always based on erring on the side of caution, like way too much to a fault. I actually just got done recording a video over is a paper from 2005 from the ADA, the American Diabetes Association, and it was how they determined the daily values that we see today on food labels. And chapter 6 was all about dietary carbohydrates. And it's really, really funny because what they did is in the paper, it says the apparent requirement for exogenous carbohydrates in the human diet is 0. So they say it outright. Then they followed up with the next sentence saying, however, what we don't know, and this is technically true, but I disagree with the conclusion. They said, what we don't know, though, is if adding more in can have a benefit. So if you eat more, can it have a benefit? So then they went through this whole thing, like trying to look through it. But at the end, what they did is they assessed how much glucose was utilized by the brain in infants, children, and adults. And it was roughly, if you took the average, it was about 100 grams per day from the brain. And so they said people should have a minimum of 100 grams of carbohydrates per day. So they said that the requirement is 0. However, having only protein and fat be used to produce your glucose in the liver is, I think they said, it's probably not acceptable, is what they said. So that's just their opinion. They just like said it because it doesn't sound right, so it must be wrong. And then not only that, but they multiplied it by 2.7, just the 100 by 2.7. So now the dietary requirement is like 270 grams of carbs per day, just to make sure your brain has all that glucose. So
I remember that like every semester I had to, so I like at Miami-Dade College they let me run wild. I would teach whatever I wanted. At the University of Miami, I had to like, follow specific things, and so I had to go over. I mean, it's not like even at Miami-Dade, I gave them the official stuff because a lot of them became nurses, so they needed to be able to work within the system. So I gave them, okay, this is what your textbook says, but here's the reality. And at UM, I would
Mhm.
do the same. I would give them both schools of thought. So the traditional school of thought is that for adults, it's 130 grams of glucose because the brain requires 600 calories just to function a day, and it can only run on glucose, so you got to give it that. And that's why you shouldn't ever drop the carbs below that. And then I would give them the reality check, which is, for 99.99% of our existence as a species here on Earth, carbs just were not an option. We evolved during an ice age where literally plants
Yep.
could not physically grow, except maybe here and there you would have some global warming, which is a natural like variation of, every once in a while the climate would just spontaneously get warmer and we would have access to some carbohydrates, but nothing close to the types of hybridized carbs that we're creating, the fruits that have been hybridized to have so much more sugar and carbs in them, and even the tubers. I mean, just go and look at any wild version of potato or whatever. It's where were the carbs? It was very difficult to access that amount of carbohydrates. So I gave them
Yep.
all this stuff, and it's so easy to debunk. I mean, how many people have been running on 0 carbs and they're thriving? So how is their brain functioning? You
Right.
know? Now they're trying those large organizations. They're slowly, you know, starting to at least acknowledge that keto, could also be helpful for like diabetes. But the official recommendation is still give them carbs and then give them the insulin to handle the food you gave them that they had no business eating. So
Yep.
it's gonna take education and time and pressure. And I think the low carb community is doing a really good job in embarrassing those large organizations. Maybe embarrassment works. We'll see how long that'll take. It's just there's just too much money on the line, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But on such a topic, though, I mean, what role do you think exogenous carbohydrates play in the human diet? Are you someone who believes they can be used strategically, or are you of the belief that you just basically never consume them or should consume them unless you have no other options for some reason?
I am not of I know there are people in this space where it's like carbs. are poison and they're going to kill you. And just I don't think that that's true for everybody. I think gut health is far more important. I think, there are people that are vegan that are in their 60s, 70s, like athletes. So there's a lot more that we still don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with the your gut health and the integrity of your gut lining and your, ability to resist lectins and anti-nutrients and all the things that usually poke holes in your intestinal lining. Whether you were breastfed or not, that plays a huge role in the thickness of your mucosal layer and your defenses against lectins and anti-nutrients. There's a lot more than just what is the ideal diet. I do think that, 10, even 12,000 years of being exposed to grains and carbs, we must have developed some level of evolution to it. We must have evolved to be able to handle some of that. It's not like, yes, evolution takes a lot of time because it's basically you're waiting for a generation to die off, and the one that dies off before it reproduces will lose those genes, and we only get handed down the genes of the ones that survive those conditions. So this is why it takes so long time, because it's based on death. It's a very gloomy way, you know. Um, I do think though that a carnivore diet might be optimal for the vast majority of people.
Mhm.
Having said that, I'm not one of those people who will just be very dogmatic about it. There was a case, I know everybody criticized it, but there was a case that was published of this guy eating like 9 pounds of cheese, and he got all kinds of, cholesterol plaques. So I think I don't think somebody just lied and published it as a complete lie. Like, I don't think people are going to go to that extreme. That it's not true that, let's just now attack the journal because we don't like what it published. Like, come on, let's just acknowledge there are things we still don't know. We need to learn more, and I don't think just having the highest levels of cholesterol and keep having cholesterol higher and higher is also good, because just we know from anti-aging medicine, I do a lot of research in that, and we know that as people age, their cholesterol tends to go up, and when we give them anti-aging treatments, that we see a lot of things that are happening in a positive way, and they're reversing their age, their cholesterol also drops. It kind of leads you to pause for a second. Yes, we're still reeling from the fear of cholesterol. We shouldn't be that afraid of cholesterol. We shouldn't have it so low in our blood. But at the same time, I don't think it should be as high as everybody's saying. Like, it's okay. It's like, no, I don't think that's true for everybody. I think we need to kind of, before we make blanket statements, I think there's a lot of nuance, because there's just a lot of gaps in our knowledge. Nobody's running these studies. We just need more studies to really figure it out. So, yeah, here's what I would say. Um, Folate can be a problem on carnivore, especially if you're not doing organ meats. So you want to pay attention to that. You want to make sure you're getting folate, because we don't want to develop a folate deficiency. So either supplement with organ meats, or if you can handle greens, if you're so opposed to organ meats, and greens, like some forms of greens, can give you the folate. That's the one thing that has lately sprung up as a potential thing to be aware of on strict long-term carnivores. Also, the cholesterol, like, if maybe it's the cheese thing, because the case that was published, he was doing a lot of cheese, so it could have been just the cheese thing. Maybe it's not just the fact that he was doing carnivore. Outside of that, I don't know. I don't think there's. I think there's a lot more issues with people who just include too many plant foods. That's where you see most of the problems. So, in a nutshell, I are carbs necessary or not? I don't think they're necessary for most, but if you're very lean and very highly active, for some people, like Paul Saladino, maybe for him, what he's doing now is a little bit better. I don't know. I don't know. For me,
Okay.
I don't think carbohydrates are necessary. For a lot of my clients, because they come from food addiction backgrounds, insulin resistant backgrounds, I don't think they need that. But if somebody's super, super lean and they're running, marathons or whatever, I don't know. They could adapt. There are people who are doing, carnivore, and they could adapt to that. But if you're doing something that's not ancestrally, uh, evolutionarily, compliant, we didn't run marathons every day, then things might change because now you're no longer living an ancestral lifestyle. And so the diet that may have worked
Hmm.
ancestrally might need to be adjusted. I don't know. I haven't gotten to that point to give you like, yeah, I'm running marathons every day and I feel like when I added honey, it helped. I don't know. It's hard to, we need studies.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
fair enough. I do want to add a note on the cholesterol thing. I think that cholesterol levels themselves, without any context, don't really give a good picture because you need the
Yeah.
context. So we know that LDL, for example, we know it's trite at this point because of how often it's talked about. LDL is the repairer of tissues. It goes over to the
Yeah.
injured cells and it repairs the tissue. So you may have an increase in circulating LDL if you have injurious situations going on. But you also might have high LDL outside of that context too for other reasons, like the administration of cholesterol at the what's it called? The it's failing me. It's in lipoprotein metabolism. I just read over my paper again on this. I can't remember what it is. But for hormone production, there's an area in the brain that is designed for that is used for production of hormones. So it just depends on the context. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, I think that there's a scientist, Dave Feldman, is doing
Yeah,
studies on
he's
that.
right.
So
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you can
yeah.
see associations between LDL and other heart health outcomes that are negative
Right.
in situations where people are quote unquote metabolically unhealthy. A proxy measure used,
Mm-hmm.
by assessing blood glucose, A1C, all that stuff, fasting blood
Mm-hmm.
glucose and stuff like that, as opposed
Right.
to whenever you look at people that are metabolically healthy, quote unquote, where you don't see that
Right.
association at all. There's like an R value of like zero point 0.2 or something. There's like
Right.
nothing there. So I think it's
Right.
it's conditional. It's what I often tell people. However, at the end of the day, I think that if you can get all those other situations ameliorated, you don't really have to focus on the cholesterol at at all, right? Like that's my opinion with that. Yeah.
I always tell my clients like, it's rare to get to see somebody with such high levels of cholesterol. So usually they'll have a
Yeah.
little bit high, and they're worried. And so I always tell them, don't worry, this is not really as high as your doctor might think. You don't need to be on a statin, but and then to make them feel better and to get more data, I will always recommend that they get the more, the LPP or the NMR test, the lipid fractionation test, to see, okay, what are the subfractions of your LDL? I want to see how much small dense LDLs do you have. Also, we test oxidized LDL and most importantly, also HSCRP, which is similar to like, if you get fasted insulin is also really good to see your metabolic health. But the HSCRP also gives me a good generalized idea of inflammation, overall inflammation in your body. Because now if you have high levels of small dense LDLs and you have a lot of inflammation, HSCRP is high, then there's a pause here, and we really need to dig deep and see, okay, maybe it's just that we need to correct metabolic health and have that drop and have you, really live a healthier lifestyle for a while, and that should normalize. Or if there's an underlying issue that needs to be attacked. But yeah, like just getting a total cholesterol, a total LDL, like that is not cause for concern. I think everybody should get the more specialized ones. Having said that, like the case that was reported, the what he had, like that does not just go away. Like they're gonna have to operate on him to remove all of those deposits. At least that's the official thing. Is like you can't get, I don't know if it will self-resolve, but like it's very serious.
Yeah. I think out of all those, oxidized LDL is the best to get because, I mean, oxidized LDL will tell you if you have a higher oxidized LDL level, then what you've got going on is you've got LDL that is deposited into, most likely, you've got LDL deposited into your arterial walls, the endothelium, that is staying there long enough to get oxidized by the blood going through it, by the
Yeah.
oxygen being carried by the blood. So that will indicate how much of it is staying there as opposed to being excreted and recycled and then the cycle continues, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think those should be routine tests, really, especially now with more people finding out the benefits of eating meat and the benefits of returning to this ancestrally appropriate diet. Like I think it should be routine, just because I think a lot of people will fall off the wagon just because they freak out. They get the first blood test, their doctor
Yeah.
scares them, and they freak out. And I don't think, that's just a waste of momentum, and then it might take them years before they figure out that, you know what, let's do another go at this. So why waste all this time and anxiety on this?
Yeah. All right. So I want to get your thoughts on creatine. So, do you think there's any benefit to supplementing with it at all? Or do you think that you can derive enough with red meat alone? I know that you recently uploaded, uh, I say recently, but it may have been a few weeks ago. My time frame is all over the place, but you recently uploaded a video on Instagram talking about creatine. You referenced a study talking about creatine and its links with cognitive function.
Right, raising your IQ levels. I think, yeah, I think if you're saturated and you're eating enough carnivore foods, you should be fine. If you're doing carnivore while going on a weight loss and going through a weight loss phase, so you're not eating as many calories as you could be eating, and you're restricting the amount that you're eating, then you could benefit from getting those nutrients in, I think. I think it's all about how super saturated you are already. So if you're eating
Yeah.
just a tiny bit because you have you're improving your leptin sensitivity. And the thing is, when somebody has 100, 200 pounds, I've had lots of clients start with me and we're dropping hundreds of pounds. In the initial phase, they never feel hunger, really, right? And then you give them steaks and it's like, I'm not really hungry. And so it's hard to overeat or eat enough nutrients just from the diet alone. They're just basically running off of their fat stores, but those fat stores are not going to give you all the creatine, for example. So yeah, I do think if you really want to make this as pain-free as possible, then there's a lot of supplements that I would add in until you achieve a phase where you're eating enough. Because now when you lose more and more weight, your hunger starts to regulate. You start feeling a little hungrier because now leptin is regulated and you don't have excess fat stores and your body senses that you're just 2 months away from famine starvation, because you don't have all this cushioning that you had before. At that point, you can eat more and you can get more nutrients from the diet alone. But yeah, there's this idea of the carnivore community is just eat meat. It doesn't matter. It's like magic. It's gonna cure all of your problems, and you don't have to take any supplement. I just don't think that's true. It's one thing like what wild animals do in the wild. They've never been overweight, they've never been obese, and then had to find a way back to health. That's completely different than actually going through the overweight and obesity stage and then having to correct that. It's a completely way of going about it. After we regulate that, then you can go more simplistic with your diet.
Yep, I agree with that. Yeah. Now, to end here with a contentious question, at least not on my channel, but in the health space in general.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible to achieve the same level of muscle mass and muscular capability on a vegan diet as compared to somebody eating an animal protein heavy diet, even with the same training type, frequency, etc., that you advocate for as being the best of the best?
Are they allowed to take supplements?
Let's say that let's get your answer for if I said no to that and then if I said yes to that.
Okay.
So first let's do no. Like no, they can't take supplements. So it's just the diet that we're considering here.
It's hard. No, it's hard unless the genetics are and there are people that are crazy genetically endowed. I follow some of them. I mean, just amazing athletes. You'd never know they're vegan, but they're supplementing. So yeah, I think for like the answer is going to apply to the vast majority of people. The answer is no. You're not going to get the same muscularity. Now, if they are allowed to supplement and they are really an expert or they're hired an expert to help them with the supplements, make sure they get enough essential amino acids, branched chain amino acids, all the nutrients, carnosine, anserine, taurine, all that stuff.
Yep.
You're right. Then it's a different thing because now we're talking like, yeah, where it's like a chemistry project, and you can do a lot with what we know in modern nutrition. So it is possible for sure. They do exist. It's just the amount of effort that goes into it is mind-boggling as compared to just eating a carnivore diet. Why not just do it more
Yep.
naturally?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I knew that was going to be your answer, but had to ask anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good question. I love it.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have for you today. I thank you again for coming up on the channel. Can you tell people what types of you're present on YouTube, you're on Instagram as well. Any other platforms that you're on, and most importantly, really, what type of content do you upload on your YouTube channel?
What type of content? Some interviews, a lot of fitness, weight loss related. Um, and so it's a little bit of interviews and a lot of sample meal plans, like the meal plan to reverse leptin resistance, meal plan to reverse insulin resistance, supplements that people can take, like the one that you saw, about creatine,
Hmm.
regenerative medicine, some anti-aging videos, a lot of carnivore, and a lot of ways to raise your baseline dopamine levels and how to do that, and utilizing that kind of the brain method to be able to stick to carnivore. Because unless somebody is in a situation that's very serious, where it's like that's it, I have to eat carnivore, like I have no other option, otherwise I'm going to get really really sick. A lot of people, they're not at that level and they're very addicted, and it's just they might recognize the benefits of a carnivore diet, but they're just they come from this background of a severe food addiction and unhealthy habits, and it's still just not strong enough to tip them over to say that's it, I'm just going to do carnivore. And so I try to help people transition. I really help people transition to be able to repair the D2 receptor damage, start to maybe do keto first, allow your body to keto adapt, feel how amazing it is to run on fats instead of carbs,
Hmm.
repair that insulin resistance. And then this is how you now clean up the diet. Now you can do whole foods, remove the artificial sweeteners because it's not good for your gut health. So I'm definitely not dogmatic as compared to a lot of like what you would traditionally consider a carnivore channel. I wouldn't consider myself a carnivore channel, more just, nutrition and weight loss and addiction and things like that.
Okay, awesome. Well, I will link all of that stuff in the description below, particularly once again the YouTube channel, but also your other pages.
Yeah, Instagram. I would say those are the two places where I'm active, and YouTube even
Yep.
more so than Instagram. Every
Yeah.
like the last, I think it's been a week since I posted on Instagram yesterday. I was like, I have to make a post, so I posted
Yeah.
something.
No, same as me. Same as me. I'm very rarely on Instagram. I'm on Instagram to reply to people mostly. Any DMs that I
Yeah.
have or anything like that. But yeah,
Yeah. It's
um,
hard to master two different platforms. Like to really take off on Instagram, it's like you really have to figure out how to do Instagram Reels, how to create that hook in the first
yeah,
few seconds. And
yeah,
it's a whole thing. Like you take courses to learn. It's like I've taken the courses, it was like, but now you have to apply it, which takes a lot of time and effort. So I'm like, let me just focus on YouTube for now.
yep. Nah, same here. Yeah, we think the same in that regard. But all right, yeah. Well, thanks again for coming on. We will absolutely talk soon. I'm sure we will stay in touch. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Eddie. This was fantastic. And yeah, hopefully in the future we'll do more interviews together.
yeah, absolutely.